Okay, hey, thanks for joining us here today. We're going to talk about all the things you need to remember when you're thinking about buying a new computer. Now, chances are if you're watching this video, you need a new computer. Maybe because your old computer's too slow, or maybe because it's broken. A lot of times when a computer breaks, it's not economically responsible to fix that computer. Okay, there's a lot of things that break that are easy and a lot of things that are more costly. Let me show you one of the more costly things. Okay, this is the motherboard of a desktop computer. Looks very similar to the ones on a laptop computer, about this large. But the motherboard has everything plugging into it. Like it's got this memory chip right here. It's got a processor. The processor is the brain of the computer. It's got all the things like the hard drive and CD-ROM drive attached to it. Then it's got all these ports attached to it, like the sound and the video and the USB ports and the Ethernet port and things like that. Usually, if anything breaks on a motherboard, it's not just one thing, it's the entire motherboard. Okay, so let's just say one USB port doesn't work. Very good chance that the next day all the USB ports are not going to work, and then your Ethernet's not going to work, and then it's not going to boot up at all. So usually one thing wrong with the motherboard leads to a cascading effect that you need a new motherboard. Now, if your computer's fairly new, you could still buy a brand new motherboard. Maybe between 1 and 2 years old, you could still buy a current motherboard, a brand new one for your computer. But past that point, you're going to have to buy a used motherboard for your computer because they don't make old motherboards, they make new motherboards, right? So you'd have to find a used motherboard for your computer that's broken. Well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So let's say it's 5 years old and the motherboard dies and you're going to go buy another 5-year-old motherboard that works. Chances are that's going to die within a year. So this part here is very expensive, and usually if your technician says it's the motherboard that's broken, you don't need to replace it unless it's a pretty new computer. Usually you want to replace the entire computer. Now, one of the parts that plugs in here is the hard drive. Now, the hard drive stores all your information. Hard drive's only about $80 if this goes bad. If it goes bad, you may have lost all of your data, all of your pictures, all your resumes and stuff like that. So this is what you really need to back up and keep your eye on, whether it's working or not. But let's say it dies in the computer. You could replace this part for about $80, but it's $100 in labor for us to transfer all the stuff from the old drive to the new one, if that's even possible. We're one of the few people in town that can take a picture of the old computer and plop it on the new hard drive. That way all your printers and faxes and emails and antivirus and all your programs are put on the new hard drive already. Then it also copies viruses and stuff too, viruses and glitches. So we have to do a lot of work to make sure that it's a good operating system if that happens. But again, you're looking at $80 for the part and $100 for labor. So at $180 or $200, or should you buy a new computer? So those are the decisions. If you have something like this, we usually, unless it's a brand new computer, don't think it's cost effective. It's better to buy a new computer for $400 or $500 rather than replace this. But this is $200. So that kind of is in the middle ground. We're not sure if you should replace this or get a new computer. So that's kind of up to you. But let's say you're in the market for a new computer. The first two things you need to think about is your budget for the computer. So let's say that your budget is, before it was like $2,000. You're looking at a really high price point to buy a new computer. Nowadays, a laptop or a desktop for Windows is about $500. So then you look at the price, well, maybe $500 isn't that bad for a brand new computer with a warranty that's faster than my old one, right? So, but first let's look at the failure rate of computers. So take a look at my computer screen over here. Okay, so in this screen over here, this is a graph of computer failure. Okay, so time is going across the bottom and failure rate is going up. So you do not want up, okay? Anything that's up here is going to have a higher failure rate. So, and this little squiggly thing is called a lambda, which is Greek for everything's going to fail. Lambda looks like a little water slope here in Greece. Anyway, Greek water slope, and here you go. This is your failure rate, but lambda is kind of where it's going to level out. But it all doesn't start at a certain level. It starts way up here. You have a very high failure rate in the first year of a computer. This little chart over here, statistics I got from somewhere, I don't know if they're exact or not, but one study that they did was a 2.8% chance your computer is going to fail in the first 3 months. People think, hey, I just bought a brand new computer for $5,000, and of course it shouldn't fail. Well, it very much could fail in the first 3 months. There's a lot of different parts on there, and basically you're the guinea pig for that computer. You're not sure if anybody's ever touched this at the factory. They put the hard drive in, put it in a box, and sell it to you. So that's the first 3 months. Look, the next 3 months is another high failure rate, about 2%. Next 3 months and the next 6 months is 2%. but you've got a burn-in failure rate. That's why manufacturers give you a 1-year warranty on the computer. Not for any of the software on there, but the hardware. That means the hard drive or the motherboard, like I just showed you. Those are going to have, look, a 6.4% chance of failing in the first year. Then it starts to level out, and it fails at a rate of about 5 to 8% per year. Okay, you can look at the little graph over here. So after 4 years, got about a 29% chance of your computer failing. Okay, kind of scary. And it starts to go up after about the 5th year. So in this graph, you can see this is called a wear-out period. And we believe that the accurate time is about 5 to 7 years for a desktop, for that desktop computer to be worn out, and 4 to 6 years for a laptop. Laptops actually have more heat in them, moved around a lot more, they get jostled a lot, and so the wear-out rate is a little bit earlier at about 4 years for a laptop. So keep that in mind. Computers are not like cars. They're more like a cell phone. After you use it so much in those first couple years, you're going to have it wearing out, and you have to transfer your data and get that all transferred to a new computer, preferably before it fails rather than after it fails. Quick story here is that women are actually better at this than men. Women have like this sixth sense and women's intuition and stuff like that that men don't have. And they know, hey, my computer's 4 years old or 5 years old, I should get a new computer. Men wait till the 7th year, and then it breaks, and then they get it to work again for another couple months, and then it breaks, and they get it to work again for a day, and it breaks, and then they bring it in and expect us to fix it or transfer their data. And by that time, it's a lot harder to do. It's a lot harder when the computer can't be booted up as to when it is working, and we can transfer it and see what your old computer's like. But keep this in mind. Now, I'm saying the wear-out time for a computer is about 5 to 7 years. But you take the amount of money that you can afford to spend, let's say it's $500, and you divide that by 5 years. That's $100 a year and about 2 to 3 cents a day. So if you have a choice of computer A or computer B, and it's only $50 difference, that is only less than a penny a day for the difference between the $500 and the $550 computer, all right? So make sure to think about that, because what you're budgeting for is not just for an immediate need, but it's going to last you 5 or 7 years. But don't get me wrong, that if you spend too much money on a computer, like $2,000, does not mean it's going to last you 4 times longer. All computers will fail at about 5 to 7 years, no matter how much money you spend on the computer, whether it's a Macintosh or a PC or a $2,000 computer or an all-in-one or a laptop. You've got a failure rate of about a really high in 5 to 7 years for a desktop and 4 to 6 years for a laptop. So think about your budget. Okay, that's item number 1. Item number 2 is your operating system. Now, an operating system is what operates the computer. You know, when you have all these hardware parts and stuff like that, these things physically don't have a clue of what to do when you turn them on. It needs something called an operating system, which tell it how to use your mouse, how to save a file, how to go on the internet, how to protect you from viruses and stuff, software and hardware, and make your CD-ROM work and everything. That's called an operating system, which makes these work. Now, there's 2 major companies that deal with operating systems. One of them's Apple, and one of them is Microsoft. Microsoft creates a product called Windows. Microsoft Windows, okay? And Apple has a product called Mac OS, or Mac operating system, to run a Macintosh. So those are 2 different competing operating systems in the world. And you have to make a choice, which one you want. Do you want a Mac, or do you want a PC, or a Windows computer? Let's start with the Mac. So let's talk about some of the good things with a Macintosh. Macintosh tends to have less problems with viruses and spyware. Those are the things that you click on in an email and they pop up and they crash your computer, or they cause damage and then advertisements and stuff like that. Those are viruses and spyware. There are about 95% of the viruses that are Windows-based, and a very small percent, 5% or less, are Macintosh-based. So if you could open an email with a virus on a Mac and it wouldn't do anything to the Macintosh. That's because the bad guys write viruses specifically for a certain operating system to infect a Windows computer or a Macintosh computer. So Macs tend to have less problems with viruses and spyware. Now, I'll be clear, it's not 0 problems. We actually have seen a few Macintosh spyware programs. Very, very rare, but that does happen on a Macintosh nowadays. So it's not 0, but it is very low for a virus, to the fact where I don't even have an antivirus on my Mac computer at my house. So just to let you know about that. It tends to have less problems with hardware and software. Hardware are the mechanics of a computer. And on Windows computers, one of the biggest things with computers is heat. And heat can damage a motherboard and damage your processor and your memory and things like that. Macintosh has revolutionary ways of dissipating the heat or making it cooler inside of the computer that Windows computers just plain don't have. So they have less problems with hardware and with glitches. You ever heard of those things? Oh my gosh, this program doesn't work, and I've got a conflict between these two programs, and this is incompatible. That tends not to happen on a Macintosh computer. So a lot of times when I teach this class, people will say, okay, let me get this straight. No viruses, no spyware, better hardware, better software. Why wouldn't everybody buy a Mac? Well, the answer is that Macs are twice the cost of a Windows computer. So a Mac laptop is about $1,000 and a Windows laptop is about $500 for the same capacity and the same speed. A Macintosh desktop, one of those big, pretty all-in-one screens, about $1,000 to start with, and on a PC side, you're looking at $500, and then you have to buy a $100 screen, so you're looking at $600. So a lot less price for a Windows computer, and Mac is twice the price. Now, on Windows, there's different operating systems on there. There's things you've heard of before, like Windows 98, Windows XP, Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8, and coming out in 2015, Windows 9 is coming out. Those are the different programs or operating systems that will operate your hardware. But Windows is the global leader in the United States. Global leader in the world. You can go anywhere in the world, from 6-year-old and up, and they could probably run a Windows computer because they know where the start button is, they know how to shut it down, they know how to open and shut a program or a window. So it's the global leader for Windows for computers. A lot of times you have to get a PC. If you have a doctor's office or a dentist's office and you have certain software like scheduling or suing somebody or billing somebody, certain software that's designed for lawyers and dentists and architects are not on a Macintosh. So you can't use that program at all. You want to make sure, if you're in one of those industries, that you check with those people to make sure that your dental software may work with a Macintosh computer if you want to go that way. But PCs tend to have a lot of viruses and a lot of glitches. And we'll talk about that later, how you can protect yourself from those viruses a little bit further down. But those are the two first things we need in our first segment. How much money are you going to spend on your computer that's going to cover you for 5 years? And what kind of operating system? A Macintosh, less problems and twice the cost, or Windows, which is the global leader and more compatible with more software and things like that. Anyway, that's our first segment. Stay tuned to our next segment, and we'll go on from there.